Our top story tonight, a primetime news investigation has found problems at the Twin Cities airport. Problems that have serious implications for the thousands of travelers who fly in and out of the airport every day. And Jeff Baillon joins us now with more on the story. Jeff?
Robin, our investigation has found trouble in the airport's control tower with the equipment. Things like a radar system that loses airplanes, or radio problems which make it hard for controllers to talk to pilots. Some people say these things are increasing the risk something bad will happen, or at least make it more difficult for flights to stay on schedule.
Arriving at 5:41.
Passenger seated in rows 1 through 21 may board at this time.
Okay, you're all set.
The 752 Minneapolis ground taxi on runway 11 left, hold short of runway 22.
What happens here has a lot to do with both schedules and safety. These air traffic controllers direct nearly 500,000 airplanes in and out of the Twin Cities every year. Millions of lives depend on them to keep those planes from flying into each other. Under good conditions, it's a stressful job, but our investigation found conditions that aren't so good. In fact, controllers are burdened with the additional stress of working with outdated equipment that frequently breaks down.
Every day there's something goes wrong, some little thing.
Something can be a two-way radio that doesn't work, briefly cutting off communications with an airplane. Or one of these radar displays, which indicate a plane's location, suddenly goes blank.
We should be on the leading edge of that technology and have it available to us if we need it.
But the reality is,
we don't.
Take, for example, this 1970s radar system used by controllers to track aircraft. If you thought it also helped them guide planes around severe weather, you're wrong.
Right now we have absolutely no weather. The planes say I'm showing a thunderstorm at 12 o'clock and 10 miles. What do you show? And we say, you know, we can see rain, and that's about all we see. And basically the planes are always left a lot on their own to get around the weather.
It's not only weather they have trouble seeing, sometimes it's airplanes too.
Cherokee 01 Kilo, traffic, no factor, turn right, heading 16.
Some planes have essentially disappeared from radar contact for a minute or more. These numbers, which identify an aircraft and tell controllers its speed and altitude, vanish from the screen. Records we obtained through the Freedom of Information Act show this has happened to 127 planes between January and April of this year. Is there a danger?
Yes, oh yes. You can have, if you forget where an aircraft is, you can lose sight of him, and he could leave your airspace and enter another air traffic controller's airspace. That air traffic controller will not know who he is, why he's there, or what he's doing there.
The records show as many as 6 planes dropping off the radar in one day. And on April 8th, 2 did at the same time. They were about 5 miles apart, with one of them descending toward the other's altitude.
It's definitely not a safety problem, and certainly in terms of comfort level for the controller and their day-to-day activities.
So far, nothing bad has happened, and the FAA maintains it is taking steps to make sure nothing does. Ironically, the solution to this problem may also be the cause. Standing right next to the radar is a new, advanced one, more capable of seeing airplanes and bad weather. It's been here for over a year, but it hasn't been put into service because the FAA doesn't have enough spare parts for it. Technicians believe the new radar is blocking the beam from the old one, creating a blind spot for planes to disappear in. But the radar is just one of the problems our investigation found. Other things go haywire almost daily. Radios that don't work, bad phone connections to controllers at other airports, radar displays that go on the fritz. A lot of it has to do with the fact the equipment is just too old.
A good percentage of the equipment around this airport, this specific airport, is almost as old as I am.
Jim Skalski is a 28-year-old technician who helps take care of that equipment. One of the greatest challenges for technicians here is maintaining this computer. It is the nerve center of air traffic control at Twin Cities International, and at 20 years of age, it's a data-crunching dinosaur.
Probably the worst performer this facility has had has been the computer system, the air traffic control computer system.
That system is what generates the radar picture controllers watch so they can make sure planes are a safe distance apart. A problem with the computer system can send this room into organized chaos as radar images freeze or disappear.
You can feel the adrenaline flow in your body. It's kind of, we call it the bottom drop. Your stomach kind of hits the floor, and then you got to start scrambling to get separation from these aircraft.
How often does it happen? About once a month. Most of the time, these computer glitches, or scatters as they're called, last for only a few seconds. Much longer, and controllers have to start delaying flights to keep the skies safe. If you lose something, you slow everything down.
That's correct. If we lose a piece of equipment that affects the controller's ability to run traffic at the minimum separations, then we will slow aircraft down.
According to FAA records, the 20-year-old computer system at Twin Cities International had more interruptions in service last year than most systems like it at other airports. Technicians say age is taking a toll. Yet that computer, like much of the old equipment here, isn't scheduled to be replaced for another 5 or 6 years.
The stakes for the public is, with the aging equipment, a decreased margin of safety.
There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that this system is still the safest system in the world.
No one is calling the current air traffic control system unsafe. That's because when a piece of equipment breaks down, controllers can almost immediately switch to a backup while repairs are made. But in the case of the computer, the backup is an even older machine, 1950s technology which uses vacuum tubes.
It should not be that way at all. We should have the best equipment that's available immediately and put it to use.
So far, the people in the control tower have made up for the shortcomings of the equipment. The maintenance staff has a record of fixing things fast, and the controllers have received awards for moving planes quickly and safely. But they all say they could do a much better job if they had better equipment. Tomorrow night, a look at the problems we found at the Regional Air Traffic Center in Farmington, which handles the airspace over Minnesota and 6 other states. And that's tomorrow at 9.
Number 23 Lima, verified climate at 900,000. You're cleared to Minneapolis via direct to the Freddie intersection, the Nichols Who arrival.
Inside Minneapolis Center, where the business of tracking airplanes goes on. Controllers here watch over a 7-state region and a lot of air traffic. More than 1,700,000 planes this year alone. It's a pressure cooker job in a place that looks like mission control.
About the time that we put somebody on the moon is when we got this equipment.
Incredibly, the air traffic control system we rely on for safe and efficient travel is dependent upon equipment that is 25 to 35 years old.
This tan-colored arrived in the early 60s. The brown or the grayish colored is the late 50s. In fact, I can show you 1959 it was accepted by the FAA.
Outdated technology, which technicians like Tom Rourke do their best to keep working, but some of the equipment tends to break down a lot.
How much of that is just a function of the equipment's age?
Most of it. I think it's mostly due to age.
Controllers are fed up with it.
Whenever I make a transmission to an aircraft, we have a database that has to get updated to pass information from controller to controller. So part of my routine duties here after I clear an aircraft to a different altitude would be to put in a different assigned altitude on an aircraft and enter it in the computer. Well, this equipment we're working with here jams up on a routine basis because it's 15 or 20 years old.
Controllers say those things mean more stress in a line of work that is synonymous with it.
You never know when something's going to go out of service, and a lot of what we do is so time critical.
A scary thought for a controller watching 2 planes flying towards each other. What if he had to tell one of them to turn, but all of a sudden the radio didn't work? This FAA report, obtained by Primetime News, documents such an incident in 1990. Because of an equipment problem, the controller lost radio contact with both aircraft. Before he could switch to a backup radio, the 2 planes had already passed closer to each other than standards allow.
People get frustrated. I mean, when those things happen, when you're really busy, you know, I've seen people get very frustrated, throw things, you know, I need this, I gotta have this.
During our investigation, we found a number of problems, from communications gear that goes haywire,
Your radio is almost unreadable.
to a radar system that has trouble detecting rough weather.
We kind of rely on the pilots to tell us where the weather is, essentially.
Sometimes the pilots have to say where they are too. That's because there are black holes in the radar system. Planes flying in lower altitudes over parts of central Wisconsin and north central Iowa don't show up on these displays.
For a controller to not be able to see the aircraft he's working and not have radar coverage to us is a real major problem.
The Federal Aviation Administration plans to improve the radar coverage eventually, part of a modernization program to update all of the equipment here. But much of it won't happen for several years, yet management believes the current equipment will do the job until then.
We presently have the best reliability that we've ever had. We are, almost for every system, we're over 99% reliable.
But those figures only tell part of the story. Every system in here has a backup to ensure safety. So if a radio, for example, fails and the backup works, then the FAA considers that system 100% reliable. Also, the dependability figures only reflect problems that are documented. A controller may have trouble with a piece of equipment, but unless a technician can verify the problem, it never gets reported.
I've screamed 100 times about this particular problem, about this landline or this, a frequency or whatever. But the bottom line is when you go down to check the reports and then they're supposed to maintain a log of things that go out, it's not there.
This was installed about 1974, and it'll be here until the advanced automation system comes in 1996 sometime.
It's a long time.
Very long time.
This old computer is what generates the images on the controller's radar displays. Each of those numbers identify an aircraft and show its altitude and speed. FAA records show the computer broke down only once in the past 2 years. Sounds impressive. But the reliability records only reflect outages that lasted for longer than a minute. Our investigation found dozens of times when the computer went on the blink for less than a minute.
That's high. That's high. For on schedule.
And each time it happened, controllers saw the images on these screens freeze or disappear. Older equipment needs more maintenance, yet the technical staff at Minneapolis Center has fewer people to do the job.
Right now we have 91 people assigned in airways facilities here in this sector. 15 years ago we had 220 some people. We're maintaining a little bit more equipment than we did then, and we're doing it with fewer people.
We always intend and we always have staff to provide a safe and efficient system.
But controllers, technicians, and officials from the investigative arm of Congress are worried. Last summer, the General Accounting Office warned that as air traffic equipment gets older, the risk increases that both the primary and backup equipment will fail. If that's true, it means a greater chance something bad will happen, or at the very least, more flight delays as controllers are forced to slow the system down to keep it safe. Do you think it's safe to say that the margin of safety is eroding?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
I disagree with that totally. From an equipment standpoint, I think the equipment is reliable. I think that's proven.
All it's going to take is one of these critical outages to have two aircraft get too close together and have to take evasive action, and people are going to realize that we're not up to date with the equipment that we should have.
The FAA began its modernization program 10 years ago. In that time, it has completed 36 projects and still has another 200 to go. Tomorrow night, we'll explain why modernization has taken so long and why it's billions of dollars over budget. In 1984, Twin Cities International came frightfully close to a major disaster.
Tower Northwest 242, a little light plane just flew over the top of us, probably 100 feet.
A small plane had wandered across the main flight path. To avoid a mid-air collision, a Northwest jet had to dive out of the way. At the time, control tower officials placed part of the blame for what happened on the airport's radar equipment. It never saw the intruder. Today, that same radar is still in use, and it still has trouble seeing airplanes. How often would you say this happens where you lose a target?
Daily.
The radar was supposed to be replaced years ago, part of the Federal Aviation Administration's plan to modernize the air traffic control system. In fact, a new radar is already in place, but it's not being used due to a lack of spare parts. It's a classic example of the kinds of problems that have kept the modernization effort in a holding pattern.
Why isn't it here, and where is it, and when is it going to get here? You know, how long do we have to hold on with this equipment?
10 years after the modernization plan took off, not much has changed on this end.
So all this stuff, I mean, it's the same. It's the same thing. It's no different than they've been using here for 15 or 20 years.
And as our investigation found, old equipment is more likely to break down. We found cases where controllers lost radio contact with planes or watched their radar screens go blank, all because of old equipment.
Because of the age of equipment, outages are happening more often.
New equipment would enhance safety and be more reliable. So where is it? Well, the FAA is years behind schedule and billions of dollars over budget with its modernization plan.
Subcommittee on Aviation will please come to order.
Recently, FAA officials told Congress that things are turning around.
We are pleased with the progress we have made and the results that are accruing in some formerly troubled programs.
The agency now has most of its modernization projects under contract, but some on Capitol Hill, including Minnesota Congressman Jim Oberstar, are skeptical.
Congress has been tolerant, patient, and understanding of the complexities and of the delays, but that tolerance is just about run out.
Why have things taken so long and cost so much? The General Accounting Office blames FAA mismanagement and the fact it's taken longer to develop some of the new systems than expected. And while GAO says there are signs FAA is getting its act together, delays and cost overruns continue.
I don't think we know enough now to say with a high degree of confidence that there will be no further slippage.
That means this equipment, some of which is upwards of 35 years old, may have to do the job indefinitely.
Because the equipment is old, it requires a great deal more maintenance. As your car wears out, you're going to have to maintain it more, and the same thing holds with electronic systems.
But nationwide, FAA is seriously understaffed on the maintenance side, and because of it, it's taking longer to fix things.
We're doing more work with less people and less experienced people.
And within the next 3 years, nearly a third of the maintenance staff will be eligible to retire. The remaining technicians will have to keep the old equipment working and also learn how to take care of the new stuff.
Taking any bags?
When you add it up, it means the flying public is still years away from enjoying the benefits of modernization, benefits which include fewer flight delays and safer skies. Many of the modernization projects are now running 5 years behind schedule. The overhaul of the entire system not expected now until the turn of the century. Those delays, with the addition of other projects, have boosted the estimated cost of modernization from $12 billion in 1983 to nearly $32 billion today.